Everybody. A few exciting things to get to. As you all did, I ate dinner watching American Idol last night and saw Keela Richardson get into the top 20, our native Pensacolian. She's awesome. Seems like she's got a real shot to win, so we're very, very excited for her. We got to have a visit with her a few weeks back here at City Hall. Very much looking forward to being glued to the TV every Monday and rooting on our native. So looking forward to that, and congratulations to her. The Bay Center study has come back. If you don't already have it, you will very shortly. But WT did our study. CRA funded that study, and it's 100+ pages. And if you recall, we knew that Legends was going to be doing a study more focused on the specific operations, and of course came out several weeks ago. They did a presentation at the county that has revenue assumptions and things like that, and we wanted to have a study that looked at some of the greater things. And the things that I'll point out in there that I think are important, because again, there's lots of pages in it, are things like what's the entire format in terms of if it's a new facility by itself, a new facility in a hotel. It starts getting into the weeds a little bit in a good way on how you're going to package this up for private investment, because you remember that was what we wanted as a deliverable, was what's something that will help us maximize the taxpayer dollar. And as you know, and I sent a letter to when we shared this to all the council members, that said, the conversation that we have heard, I'm not part of, but that we've heard is this $75-ish million bonding capability. Well, if you look at the numbers, it's pretty clear that $75 million isn't going to go a whole heck of a long way in terms of certainly a new facility, much less if that's even enough to cover renovation. So we got involved in this because my concern was there's better ways to leverage $75 million than just paying whatever the renovation is. And I am certainly happy with the product of this report that allows some of that and will really spark conversation amongst the county and city about which way to go. There's another section in there that talks about some of the funding mechanisms of public-private partnership, for example, that are government backed. So there's the Build America Better program, the USDOT. We've actually already had an introductory meeting with them, and they have different tools in the toolkit that like low interest financing for a public-private partnership, up to 49% of the project cost, as an example. And you'll see a few different things in there like that. So just giving those as anecdotal examples of this wasn't just looking at where the pieces go on the property, which is what the Legends, we knew that they were going to be covering that, was to look a little bit bigger about format, about delivery, and all of those things. So I had a great call with them late last week as they were rolling it out to me for about 90 minutes, got a lot of questions answered. Happy to attempt to answer whatever questions that you have. But most importantly, there's going to be during the April CRA meeting, WT will present this report. That'll be April 6th. And it looks like we've gotten confirmed the April 16th joint meeting date with the city and county to discuss this. So I've asked WT to come present at both. So it isn't just presenting to the CRA. Certainly, CRA funded it. I think it's important for CRA to have an opportunity to ask questions, share concerns before we go into a joint meeting. But looking forward to having WT at both of those things. So again, I'll do my best to answer any of the early questions that you have, and I know you may have some follow-ups as you go through the report. So just reach out to us on that. And lastly, great productive meeting with Allison Patton, council president, and board chair Ashley Hochberger last week. Obviously, just waiting to get this report back, trying to get these things scheduled, start to think about timelines and how things may go. So good first meeting with them. You may have just received the note about that Russell Coutts, from the CEO of SailGP, will be in Pensacola on Wednesday and Thursday. For folks who don't know, arguably the most important person in sailing in the entire world. Not just the CEO of SailGP, obviously he's been part of 5 America's Cup victories, and is an integral part of the future of what SailGP looks like around the world, and certainly here. So he has not been here before, and but I think his presence helps reinforce what I always talk about with you guys, is that I think Pensacola is establishing itself as the preeminent sailing destination in the United States, and certainly that's reinforced with his visit. So looking forward to meeting with him personally and having him here. I know as of this morning, there's going to be media availability at 2 o'clock at American Magic tomorrow for you guys. Again, if you don't already have that email, you will any minute. And also Mike Kaiser will be here, for the CEO of American Magic will be here to discuss. I know you guys haven't, since the news of buying the Danish SailGP team, he'll be there to answer any questions you may have about that. We do have the GL52 sailboats back on Pensacola Bay March 19th for their Southern Series regatta that they did here last year. It's actually 2 events, March 19 and through 22, and then April 9th through 12th. So that, looking forward to having, again, it's a couple hundred folks from out of town in here for that big event. And quick note, I know a lot of you guys have covered it or asked about it, on the Graffiti Bridge. Certainly looking forward to getting that project finally going. And you know, I would say, with the discussion around it publicly, the most important thing to point out is the need for the infrared system was to create harmony amongst all of the things trying to happen on the south side of the bridge, be it a boat launch. We looked at many other, you know, and yes, I've gotten, whether it's my buddy's text message or a Facebook comment that says, you know, why don't you buy a case of beer on a weekend and go bring a bag of concrete and put a man-made or tangible thing over the top. Obviously, I've gotten a good chuckle out of that, but obviously those have been priced also at $150,000, $200,000, $250,000, because there's lots of requirements when you put things in like that, including right-of-way, wind rating, and making sure that the city doesn't get sued when somebody hits one of them. So I wish it was that easy on lots of our city projects, that that don't need to be permitted and you can build whatever you want. As a matter of fact, the one allowable option of a physical chimes, let's call it, that FDOT even permitted for us, was one that had these enormous orange, like almost nautical buoys at the bottom of them to hit the vehicle. And as I joked in our office, I was like, we wouldn't have heard the end of that if we had put something that looked like that in front of our Graffiti Bridge on both sides. So nonetheless, I think the infrared solution solves our issues of allowing boats that are much higher than the clearance of the bridge to be able to get to that boat launch, as well as to warn somebody far enough in advance if they're coming northbound on 17th Avenue. So again, looking forward to finally, this has been a conversation that's been going on here for 3 years, and I guess probably generations before that, and looking forward to trying to finally this summer get that solved and see if we can significantly lower those strikes. The sanitation staff is shifting some work hours for yard debris pickup. This is that time of year, of course, where everybody's cutting back their yards and everything like that, so that gets us a little bit behind the 8 ball. I do like to point out that this is a service that is included with your service. That's not always the case in every city. Cities have moved to charging for yard waste pickup. Counties have moved to doing that. We have not. And so this is, when you think about the garbage service you get, we think about just that. But within realistic parameters, there are size parameters, but this is a free service. So, but this is every time this time of year we get a little bit behind. So, what does that mean for residents? It means if your garbage normally gets picked up at 7 or 8 in the morning, it might be getting picked up at 2 in the afternoon or 3 in the afternoon, into 6 o'clock, because we're just working double time. So don't fret if it hasn't been picked up by the morning. If you don't see it the next day, obviously give us a call 311, but just know you might see some delays within the same day of your normal pickup due to that. The update on the old Waverly project, 215 West Garden Street, had a good call with new developers that are coming in, and they're Atlanta-based branch properties that they are going to ARB for the March 19th meeting. And I know it'll include a grocery store, restaurant, and retail space. It won't be residential. And you'll see the plans that they haven't. I imagine that ARB, the agenda will be coming out any minute now. And I know that the developer's working on a release as well that'll have some of those renderings and some information. So that, again, looking forward to having something there. What I can tell you is certainly their attention to detail from an aesthetic standpoint, knowing that that's in the heart of our downtown, was extremely important to me. Where you put parking, or where you propose to put parking, how the building looks, all of those things. And I was certainly encouraged to know that that's something that they took into consideration, not just what the minimum that the ARB requires, but knowing that it needs to be something that is compatible with our downtown and our community. So March 19th, that'll go for review. And again, you should get either a release from them. It's certainly their announcement on details, but you'll see some of those renderings when the agenda hits. We had the first CLT home closing this week, 112 Spring Street. I know it may get delayed. It may. We don't know exactly if it's going to be tomorrow, Thursday or Friday. We'll keep you posted. But that was part of one of those 3 scattered sites that we worked with the Home Builders Association and Habitat to get done. Those are all done, and excited to hand the keys over to somebody who's going to live in a house that's the first. I guess would be the first house where someone's moved in the history of Pensacola where it's a permanently affordable home. So we're excited for that. The super busy weekend. I was telling folks it might be the busiest weekend we've ever had here, as far as I can recall. From spring break starting with beach traffic, plus Sunbelt, plus cruise, plus McGuire's, plus wine on the water. It was a crazy week. Certainly appreciate people's patience. I know there was a lot of traffic there. We did the best we could to handle it, but most importantly, no major incidents. And keeping everybody safe out there. Our central command did a great job getting us prepared and ready to go. And the next visit for the cruise ship is March 19th and 20th, where they'll be back. We have another community meeting for Baptist Demolition that's set for April 9th. Our team is going to be also basically alternating between community meetings and then doing kind of the on-site. I believe it's March 27th. We'll get you I think 7 a.m. March 27th is if folks want to come on-site actually and come see what's happening there. So they're going to alternate community meetings at a community center and the opportunity for residents and to be actually physically come onto the Baptist property. Can't promise they can go into every room of every building, but Josh Wallace, our rep, will be there to answer any questions that they have. So those are the next 2 dates, I believe, March 27th at 7 a.m. and April 9th at Fricker is the next community meeting. The Palafox update, nothing significant in terms of but I'll tell you just some deadline dates that are remaining as of now. All the stormwater infrastructure should be 100% complete by April 3rd. The curb and gutter install, again, you see that rolling now, 100% complete by April 24th. And then an irrigation install for the trees, the landscaping and everything else will be 100% complete by April 10th. We have had some conversations with local business owners about where the 6-foot path for ADA requirement will actually be designated after the construction. Obviously, our strong preference has been to keep it under the awnings, so to speak, where it's been before. And then with now this additional sidewalk space, allowing those tables and chairs to be on the other side of that 6 feet. I know there's been some folks that want to do it the other way, but we just can't figure out a more common sense, feasible solution than keeping the pedestrian walkway next to the building and then allowing the seating on the other side of the walkway, how it's been previously in a lot of places. The let's see, trees being removed from the Baptist site. If you want a clear update on that, again, Josh Wallace came and gave better than I can to our at our meeting yesterday. Was able to give an update of striking the harmony between the crepe myrtles, the non-native crepe myrtles that need to be removed for us to actually demolish the buildings. and making sure that we continue to be mindful of any trees that we can preserve. Any project like this starts at a default of go ahead and clear the trees. I can tell you with Cliff Collins in the back and Josh, we are doing every single thing that we can to ensure that we preserve every tree that we can. We know that when this comes back, that we want, tree canopy is important. So more to come, obviously, as this demolition goes through. But the most recent request is just the 33 crepe myrtles, and it's those 33 are about 7% of the 472 trees that are on the 42-acre property. So not an enormous amount, and again, not heritage trees or as well. That is everything I got, and happy to take your questions.
Mayor, on the Bay Center study, the survey results,
Yeah.
can you kind of talk a little bit more about that? It seems like there was more, from what I've read, more support, a lot of support from the convention center, but the ice rink was more polarizing.
Yeah, so I mean, it was pretty clear. The 1,900 responses, it was pretty clear. I mean, it seemed as if the conference center was a clear number one, the sports facility is a clear number two, and then a distant third to that was the ice rink. I looked at the same way you do in other polling. I think it's important to look at kind of the favorable, unfavorable, the spread between the amount of people that favor a project and don't. And so not when we asked the 1,900 residents to rank them 1, 2, 3, that was a pretty clear 1, 2, 3, actually more clear than I thought. I thought it might actually be closer. But the second thing I look at is what is the spread of basically fave, unfave, the same way you see in any type of polling of, plus 50 or minus 10, what is the difference between how a project is favored and unfavored? And that was equally as clear on the conference center. I think it was like 71, 11, something like that. So I probably, if I was predicting before it came out, I probably would have guessed that order, but I was actually kind of surprised by the significance of difference between the clear 1, 2, 3. I mean, when you look at that, I don't think it's that you can debate any way you cut those numbers, that you can debate that's the order. And of course, remember, as you know, Jim, I mean, there's been conversations I've heard, not ones that we've had here at the city, but about, well, should it be a multi-purpose facility? And there's some interesting thoughts about that. On one hand, I have some concern about sometimes doing what governments do, which is try to do too many things and then have kind of a half-baked conference center and a half-baked sports facility instead of having one really good one. But certainly our experts, I know Legends shared the same thing, that hey, it's 2026. There's a reality where maybe those things can live in harmony and that we not give up quality. And I will tell you, I asked the question to the WT folks specific to that to say, hey, where have you seen this work where maybe there's one facility that can kind of accommodate those two uses? And they seem to be pretty bullish about that. You'll see examples that they use. They also said, interestingly enough, something I didn't think about. They said, well, when it comes to a hotel, and lots to be debated whether that's going to be the Grand Hotel or some type of new hotel, what makes the most sense to private investment. But for whoever the hotelier or the private partner would be, there's a plus for the multi-purpose because it's just more dates that there's going to be stuff going on, right? If it was only a conference center or only sports, then that's just going to naturally be less dates that are actually full. So they said, hey, just a secondary thing to factor in is the more multi-purpose it is means the more events happening there means the more value that private investment's going to put on any type of hotel facility. So I thought that was an interesting little tidbit when I asked that question. So yeah, I think it's pretty clear that that's the ranking. That's the 1, 2, 3. But I think there's lots of conversation for the county to have, for us to have collectively about, do you combine it, what order, what cost, all those different things.
Do we have the demographics on the people who took the study?
I don't know that they're. I know we have age demographics, and of course, recall this is like our parking study was before. That this is not limited to city residents, like the resident satisfaction survey. When we did the parking survey, there was 5,000 results because, lots of people interact with the Bay Center. So there's a few age breakdown demographics, but we didn't get into.
Whether it really reflects the demographics of the community or not. I don't know that.
Well, I guess it depends on which demographics that you're using. I can tell you 1,900 folks that are interested in the Bay Center, ranking those things, seems to be like a pretty good sample size.
We don't know why they're interested in the Bay Center.
Well, if you look at the survey, it actually asks specific questions about why, for all three. It says, why do you like the ice rink, the sports facility? And it says, what are you most concerned about on all three? So it does give you some impression of what everybody's concerns are, or what everybody's strengths are. But no, I mean, if you're asking, did we do a $15,000, political, survey on this, we felt like the
No,
volume.
it's not necessarily
Yeah.
political. I mean, you do.
No,
you
I
do surveys all the time. It doesn't, the word political diminishes quite
right. No, and what I'm saying, I'm using political as in the literal form, meaning a political survey that would have
For scientific.
hundreds of pages of crosstabs. But all I can say is, I mean, this is a survey of 1,900 people that we asked publicly if they had any interest in the Bay Center. They got enough interest to have filled it out, and understand that obviously this is voluntary and it is not limited to city residents.
In your talks with WT, what did they say the value of the survey was as far as what it brings to the study? Because it's like, to Rick's point, it's not a scientific poll, but it's just who responded to the link or Facebook post or whatever.
Sure, yeah. If you're asking, did they do an entire study based around a survey that went out on Facebook, the answer is no. Obviously, they bring their own expertise and bring their own. That is one aspect of it, because we said we would. Listen, I know anybody who's going to be supportive of the results is going to say that's the most scientific survey ever, and if somebody doesn't like them, they're going to say, well, why didn't you ask this person or that person? So that's the nature with every survey. So I think, but to answer your question directly, did WT wait to do a 135-page study until they got 1,900 results? Absolutely not. And again, I think that's pretty evident when you look through it, that they're bringing lots of expertise and best practices and different formats from all over. They don't make a recommendation that I've seen. It's a lot of pages, but they don't say this is the way you should do it. All they're doing is presenting the results and letting, I guess, the city and county decide how they want to interpret them.
I guess the question is, did they, when you talk to them, did they tell you like specifically what this survey adds to the study? Because like they've compared a lot of, just glancing through what I've been able to, they've compared a lot of different markets and everything. So what does the survey bring to it? That's because they have a lot of economic data in here, but I guess.
So I guess you probably have to ask them that. I just mean where it is on the experts pie chart of how important it was, all that. You'd have to probably they're the experts. You'd have to talk to them on what ratio that is. But if I'm answering your question, I'm trying to. Maybe I'm not following.
Okay. Well, I did want to ask about what they do have in their summary on the study. Is they say the success of any project would be connected to an adjacent hotel, which is attractive, and it looks like a ranking to me at least. They say the convention center would be the highest economic tourism impact, indoor sports complex would be moderate to high return, and then ice rink is limited regional draw and highest subsidy requirement. I guess, is that your understanding? What are your?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I mean, again, when you converge survey data and an expert study that conducted over months of time, I guess that sounds like what I read. So, and I know one of the questions again will be specific to is what does that mean for the Grand Hotel? What does it not mean? I know there's been some talk around about, well, should the city or the county get involved in acquiring the Grand Hotel or something like that? My position would be, I'm a little more small government than that. But I think if there's going to be, whatever the commitment level is, whether that's just the renovation, no matter what's decided, I think that once the private market sees some additional investment going into this area, my presumption is that conversation will probably start to take care of itself, meaning the private market will dictate what needs to happen there. I don't mean that it's not important for us to have a role in everything that happens around it if we can, but I would assume that as this conversation continues to move forward in 2026, there's going to be more and more phone calls outside of the city or the county going to the owner of that property, just when they start to see whether a big renovation taking place, something like. I think that's probably the most, from a taxpayer standpoint, that's probably the most prudent way to allow that to play out at this point. And then, listen, I don't think we're going to know whether should there be a second hotel that's actually on site that we saw in those Legends renderings. Will it just be the Grand Hotel? Who knows? I think that's going to be dictated by the investment. I don't know that that's going to be a decision that's made at the government level. I think the market is going to dictate whether that, whether a second hotel makes sense, whether it's just the Grand Hotel, et cetera.
And then just two more questions on this. I guess there's another bullet point in here is that it should evaluate whether incorporating the tech park either through a ground lease or potential hotel development would generate stronger development interest. What are your thoughts on incorporating the tech park into it? And then just generally, what do you hope this will bring to your discussions with the county?
Yeah, well, it's funny. The tech park conversation actually reminds me of the previous, when I came into office about the port. It was the same conversation. It was kind of like, do you want to take the entire tech park and get rid of the entire thing, or do you want to not touch it? Well, same thing at the port. It was, do you want to put condos there? Or do you want to have heavy industrial? And we kind of found our niche. I feel the same way about the tech park. I feel like first and foremost, remember the tech park exists because it was the expansion area of the Bay Center. That's why if you go back to that, before it was the tech park, it was the 2.0 expansion of the Bay Center area. So that's why it exists. Secondly, I think there could absolutely be harmonious uses that help enhance the viability of the tech park that also enhance the amenities at the arena, conference center / whatever. And an example, the first thing I think of as a amateur urban planner would be parking, right? Because anybody who's going to build a building of significance at the tech park is going to need parking anyway. You got to have your employees be able to park on site. I would think that there's probably some type of harmonious, you take a couple acres of that and make that parking with a catwalk over to whatever facility. Because again, especially if there's an attempt to do all three facilities, as it shows on one of those renderings, what's left out is parking. And there is a parking garage under that hotel that's drawn on the map, but that's going to be self-parking. That's not going to be able to feed the entire area. So that's that little $25 million unknown that's out there, $30 million unknown, that if you were to do all three, an ice rink and the multi-purpose and the renovation, not only is that the $200 million price tag, but also it leaves out an 8-figure investment that would need to take place. So that's just me talking. When I think of the tech park, I think of some type of fractional use of the tech park that allows the tech park to still have its opportunities to be successful. But I mean, I would be open to any conversation, and that'll be an interesting conversation to have with the county. I mean, that's city and county owned property over there, and so the decision of the direction of that ultimately lands with the city and county. So would be looking forward to talking to county commissioners about that, city council members, and see where that goes. So that's just what I look at again as an amateur off the cuff is some type of maybe hybrid use of that dirt that can enhance the use. That doesn't have to be all or nothing. It doesn't have to be don't touch it or use all 8-9 acres, whatever that number is.
And sorry, there's another question on this. Is it also mentions that there may be opportunities for, it's called TIFA funding.
Yeah.
TIFIA. What is that?
Yeah, I'll try to not get in the weeds too much because the funding things can obviously be a little heavy. But again, what I feel was very valuable in this study specifically is we start to address the elephant in the room, which is how are you going to fund these things? So there's they mentioned the TIFIA funding which I believe is the one that is, it's transportation based. It's a little more difficult to pull off at that location. Interestingly enough, the ferry landing is considered, and so anything within a half mile of a transportation hub gets additional value to an investment like this. Now, unfortunately, the ferry landing is not, Bay Center is not within a half mile of the ferry landing, but it was kind of just, it wasn't a recommendation, but it was just something for all of us to consider is if there was going to be some transportation, city, county transportation element on site somewhere, that can be a whole nother layer of funding, financing, and things like that, I believe is the TIFIA. And then again, the US DOT, the Build America Better program, we had an initial conversation with them because those programs are geared towards anything that affects transportation. Well, we can all sit here and agree right now that anything happening at the Bay Center, whether it be getting rid of an off-ramp, all of that traffic that's getting on and off the interstate has a big impact on transportation. So, I think those are going to be good two interesting things to look at moving forward and to discuss moving forward is because it's one thing to plan what the facilities are, how are you going to pay for it, and how do you make it the most palatable for investment, and I think those are a couple mechanisms that'll be worth looking into to see if we can make the deal as successful as possible.
After the presentations and community conversations regarding this analysis, what would be an ideal timeline to take action on this document?
I think that's a conversation for April. I mean, remember, at some point, there's going to have to be an RFP. I mean, that's probably the only thing you can say right now is what's in that RFP. Is it everything? That seems to be the common of where it's management plus engineering plus design plus construction, where they build these entire teams to get something like that done. That seems to be the most customary way in these situations where it's ended up. But there's going to be feedback from county staff and county commissioners. There's going to be feedback from city council. So I mean, really, we haven't tried to build a full timeline, not because that wouldn't be nice to have. I just think there's a lot of conversation that needs to take place first about what priorities are. And how we want to attack this thing. So April 16th really is the first one, and again, looking forward to that conversation, and I'm sure there'll be things brought up there that will factor heavily into the answer to that question is what are those next important dates moving forward. But I can certainly say from the administration side, we have urgency to get this thing going, because we know that, I mean, this is not going to be a 6-month process, right? In terms of funding, RFP, going out to public-private partnership, financing, making decisions on what facilities do or don't come to fruition. Lots of conversation to have. Looking forward to it, but I just think so that's why we really want to be as urgent as possible, not because we're in a rush, but this is, if we aren't behind any form of urgency, this could take years. So I'm hoping to move this as quickly as possible. And every indication I've gotten from every elected official involved in this, I've never heard someone say, don't worry about it, let's take our time. I think everybody feels that urge to get this 40-year-old building up to par and make something happen.
Mayor, your letter to the CRA board has a pretty ominous statement in it. It says, our operational sublease with the county makes it clear that the city approval is required for either a significant renovation or the construction of any new facilities on the site. Some at the county might consider that a threat.
What? How's that?
That you won't approve, unless you like what they say, you won't approve it.
Of course not. Ominous could be your term. Facts. Facts. Yeah, you can editorialize ominous. I would say factual, but no, actually, if that leaves out the vast majority of the letter that says no, I think this needs to be done collaboratively. I think that should be our focus, and keep our eyes on the prize. And as I clearly also say in that letter, hey, if we want this to be successful and we want this to happen anytime soon, we have to work together and not in silos. Was the other 97% of the letter that's what it says. But it's important for our CRA board or our city council to know that from a legal standpoint, that we absolutely, as city residents, as city taxpayers, have a say in what happens on the property. No, we do not plan on waiting for the county to do something and then deciding yes or no. I certainly hope, unless you've heard some indication from the county that they don't want to work collaboratively, I don't think that's a moot point. Hopefully we continue to work collaboratively on this together. That's why we're having a joint meeting. And I think that's what's best if we're representing our region, our county, and our city.
So you're comfortable with a plan that doesn't have a convention center?
I don't know what I'm comfortable with. I think we need to have a conversation when put two elected bodies together and figure it out. I mentioned at least specifically to sports facility or that. Walking into it, I would have said, well, I wouldn't want to do that, and maybe we would. I'm interested to hear more from everybody. I try to make, to a fault sometimes, we try to be as pragmatic as possible about what we think is best for the city. And so if you're asking whether I'm emotional about what does or doesn't happen there, I'm not. What I want is to understand what's the investment going to be, what's the highest and best use for our community. I hope that that's how we're all looking at this, is how do we come up with the best common sense solution?
Mayor, just shifting gears here. Is there anything new regarding the Chappie James Memorial Project?
Not that I'm aware of. Again, I think same where it's been before. We've got to put the onus back on them for proof of funding and everything else, but nothing that's hit my desk anytime recently.
There's an item on Thursday's agenda to allow public comment in agenda conference meetings. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's a Councilman Bear obviously sponsored item. So genesis of that, you'll have to ask them. Listen, we're always welcoming public comment, we obviously strike the balance between the amount of time it takes to govern and public comment, of course, and having it at the right opportunity. So. I really don't have much opinion one way or the other. Interested to hear what the conversation is around that before, and ultimately it's the council's meeting. So, my opinion on that is kind of secondary anyway.
Mayor, on the city council had the workshop on the 6 parcels at Baptist Hospital last night. It seemed like they were supportive of the community health project, but I guess what is your take on where that issue stands now?
Community health or all the parcels?
No, all the parcels.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so yeah, obviously encouraged to hear, and I would have been surprised if somebody that wasn't wanting to support low-cost family dental or healthcare in the community. And as I told you last week, those items are ready to go. As a matter of fact, I mean, we could put them in the. The hope was actually to have them here. We certainly respect and understand the process of when they voted in October to have some type of workshop, and we were just getting to that. But the other direction that I asked for, since we were having a workshop about it anyway, was if the question was posed to the administration about, well, what do you want to do with the other 2 buildings? Well, I can't in good faith go out and talk to really anybody about donation or sale or anything like that without the disposition of the properties, which is what we had requested in October. So if it seems like there's some favor to do that, then what we might do is bring a 4th item, 3 items to get community health done, and a 4th item that goes back to the request of the disposition of the other 2 properties, because as I reminded them, disposition does not mean the administration can do whatever it wants with the buildings. It has to come back to council for them to approve. But it's kind of hard to have too many substantive meetings about these buildings when I have to go meet with someone or they call me. It's kind of hard to say, well, I don't even have the administration has the ability to be disposed of at this point. So I hope that we'll move in that direction with the other 2. We've had a couple meetings, small meetings with it, certainly encouraging ones at one of the buildings, but not enough to even, it's other, not even enough, I guess, momentum to that I'd want to even say who it is. They've got boards and everything else. But I mean, there's been just a couple bites of interest around the other buildings. But again, we haven't pushed that real hard because at this point, we don't even have the authority to move those properties. So I would feel more comfortable engaging in deeper conversations about those buildings if 2 things happen. 1, get the disposition, and 2, as I told them and I said leaving the meeting, we're happy to listen to any direction that the sitting council member or any of the 7 have about priorities. Councilwoman Breyer brought up the idea of, well, you're talking about buying child care facilities with the ECT money. maybe turn one of those. I was like, sign me up. I love that idea. We got to get in there and see if that's the most cost-effective way to do it. But the third building, that smaller one, that's kind of catty corner from the community health and the old HR building, certainly right size for it. But we got to get in there and check that out. So I was encouraged by that, and hopefully we can start to see some more momentum of what we want to do with those buildings, here in the coming months.
Mayor, have you given much thought to the Bay Center, the amount of money it's going to take to get this ultimately over the finish line? Have you thought of a regional approach to this, going beyond a neighborhood approach? In other words, a big chunk of Santa Rosa County is really a bedroom community for both our county and the city of Pensacola, particularly the western side, southern side. Do you think that's a bridge too far, or do you think that is within the realm of possibility?
You mean from a financial stacking standpoint, or
Inclusive type of approach?
I think we should there's going to be a hefty price tag on whatever unless it stops at just the renovation of the Bay Center. Doesn't matter what, any new facility is going to require the facility and a parking garage. I mean, you're not going to be able to add a facility to the site and then have less parking than you had before. That isn't going to work. So you already know you're going to be in the tens of millions of dollars, even with the smallest, on top of the $75 or $80 million renovation. And I qualify that, and I'm sure that Legends, of course, they're in the business, they know those numbers. But from my personal experience, when you get a cost estimate 2 years before you actually, or a year before you go to RFP, I'm waiting for the first time that one's lower than it was initially said. So even what we're calling an $80 million renovation of the Bay Center, I'm just going to presume is more expensive by the time it actually gets to bid. So there's going to be a significant investment, and those are dollars that don't exist in bed tax or anything else. So I think, to your question, I think we should be as imaginative as possible. And again, that's what I think, different tactics that are mentioned in this study, some might make sense, some may not make sense. But I think that's the type of thinking that we need to do as a community is whatever needs to be involved. I mean, prime example, the transportation thing. If there's some way that, if that added $25 or $30 million I asked WT to come up with what a number value would be if we did get that TIFIA designation or that transportation designation. What's that worth ultimately, right? And so we don't know that yet, but it would be interesting to look into. So that's another way that we get creative is to try to put dollars in. So yes, I would think no matter what is decided, if a new facility is decided, period, there's going to be a pretty significant financial lift, and we've just got to figure out. I think we should be looking at everything at our disposal. So if there is some type of regional element that brings better financing or grant funding or anything else, we should absolutely be looking at that, and I think we would have a case to make.
In the WT study, which I haven't seen yet, did they talk about examples of the Truist Park in Atlanta?
Yes, yeah. So a lot of the 100+ pages of it are best practices of, here's a multi-purpose facility here, here's a sports facility there, et cetera, ice rink here. So they went through and gave, different examples, things like that. Obviously, I haven't. It's pretty fresh to me too, so I haven't memorized every one of those or anything like that. I was looking more at the kind of the content of the study, but yes, they give some examples of maybe, and again, best practices, and they also give good examples of, again, how you would package something up for an RFP to go to the private market. I think it was kind of like an A, B, C, D of how you would package different things up. So I thought that was valuable, and certainly something I didn't have a lot of knowledge about until we got the study.
The DIB, the legislation establishing our DIB as a taxing authority in the district gives them the ability also to go off-site to properties that are not contiguous to their legislative boundary, and then apply that same taxing authority for specific projects. Have you talked to Walker Wilson about that? I
know Walker, in the early parts of this conversation, has certainly been amenable to the DIB playing some role in that, which I appreciate. And certainly, I think that does make sense. I think a renovated base center and or new facilities would certainly be a boon to the taxpayers that he represents, certainly. So, so I appreciate his openness about that. We haven't had that specific conversation. We've talked, like you've asked about before, CDD type things. But that's another example. And again, why we've got a long road ahead of us to get to some type of deliverable, right? We have a long road ahead of us to consider all sorts of things like that. And that's why I personally have some urgency to get this conversation moving, just knowing how many hills are left to climb. So I think that but certainly would be one to look into for sure.
Mayor, in your meeting with Council Chairman Patton and also Commission Chairman Hopper, was there any specific process discussion? And the reason I ask is because I think at the last joint meeting, my opinion, it was more of a talk fest than it was a process thing. And there were some discussions about subcommittees or working groups. Did you talk to the two leaders? We have another meeting scheduled. With it being the first one, I think we were just kind of trying to take each other's temperature on hey, this is going to be a long process. How do we want to play out? How do we want to have joint meetings go? I think it was just, I thought it made a lot of sense from a legislative and executive standpoint, just to say, hey, make sure that there isn't some outlier where we're not on the same page. I mean, we weren't trying to figure out the world in that meeting necessarily. I think we were just kind of being able to look each other in the eye and make sure there isn't some grave concern. I think everybody's got, an opinion about this or that. But I think it was just make sure we're on the same page, that we're trying to get as much alignment as possible. And again, I think that's led to this, us having this April 16th meeting. And listen, I think joint meetings can be difficult in that way. There's 13 people, in there. And remember, I can't promise, this is going to be a download meeting as well, right? This is going to be WT coming in and giving some of this information that they promised that they would deliver. And so, it feels like obviously there's going to need to be decisions made on what facility, what renovation and what facilities and what that priority list looks like. I would think that's going to have to be some type of early conversation. I think an interesting conversation also is how do we move this project? Do we need to have some type of representative, an owner's rep or something like that to help move this project forward, right? And, there's could be mixed opinions on that, right? I like to think, I haven't done a $250 million, arena development personally, so I like having, the same way Josh Wallace is doing that at Baptist. I think if there was somebody maybe representing, or if we couldn't agree on that, even if the county had a representative and the city had a representative that could work together, you get it from 13 to 2, maybe that could help move it forward. So, and you know what, they may look at me like I'm crazy, and we don't do that. And so I think hopefully we just start to move the ball on some of these really, really big pie in the sky conversations about, what ifs. And so I hope there's some substance and at least some substantive conversations in that can set us up maybe for, a follow-up meeting to make some decisions. Just worried about deliverables of these kind of things.
Yeah.
What are the expected deliverables?
Yeah.
If you're going to take time to have a joint meeting of all the players,
Right.
Are we wasting our time, or are we looking for plan of action and milestones?
There's only one on the books right now, and so I would hope that the download, listen, it's an enormous decision. It's a generational decision. I don't want to discount the idea that that some people might read the study. Obviously, we've sent it to the county as well, so they'll read the study and have lots of questions. Some may not have read it at all. There's going to probably be varying levels of understanding about, and so, I say we're urgent, but we certainly want the people who are going to be charged with making good decisions on behalf of their residents to have the ability to hear that information, be able to download it, digest it. I think it would be unrealistic to put on the administration, the council, or the county commission that we would walk out on April 16th saying, yeah, here's what our RFP is. But at least the framework of maybe what a timeline would look like. I mean, that would be interesting. But again, I'm just really focused on April 16th. Let's all make sure that we understand, have our questions, have our concerns about the information that we've made available. And then I think organically we'll feel out what those next steps are.
The Southern Rail Commission says they've been in talks with Pensacola leaders about extending service here, particularly with buses.
Uh-huh.
Have you been a part of those conversations?
Not in the last couple of weeks. Actually, early on, when this conversation, initially probably within my first year, that was a conversation that came up. And listen, that's a decision. It's just like when we get direct flights. I'd love to say that because I asked nicely, Delta added a flight. I don't think they care as much about that as they do about how many people are going to get on that plane. So I kind of feel like it happening organically, not and they never asked for a subsidy or anything like that, but it was still a what if because Mobile didn't even have service at the time. So the fact that they're rekindling that, I think is a really bullish sign for the service that's already happening over there from Mobile to New Orleans, and a bullish sign for us because if it wasn't something that made sense for them, then they probably wouldn't do it. So I look at that as a big positive that they're looking at that, and I can tell you, anything that they would need from the city perspective that would encourage that service and make it that much easier for our Pensacolians to use it. We're all ears. So looking forward to any conversation or any requests that they have to entertain that and see if we can make it happen.
So it's just an idea, like where does that stand?
Yeah, well, as far as our side, again, I don't know that there's been any formal requests made. I could see a scenario, like for example, where would the pickup be? I don't know. It could be in the county, it could be in the city. So no, nothing of substance has come to us or a decision point, but I'm encouraged by the conversation around the service because that means Pensacolians are using it. They have data to track these things like the air carriers do. And so if they're trying to fill demand by having service that makes it easier for our citizens to use it, city residents, county residents, then I think that's a great thing. And so I like the idea, and I can just speak generally that we would be in support of that, and we'd be happy to help them, in any realistic way possible.
Mayor, did you get a chance to watch ESPN's coverage of the Sun Belt Championship game last night?
I did not see I was hanging out with my friends in here until about 6:15 or 6:30. So
if you did you have an opinion on the Pensacola branding?
Yeah.
That was included in that.
Are you talking about the Visit Pensacola break? No, so sorry, I didn't see what. Okay. Yeah, so I was, as I said, hanging out. We had about a 3-hour one yesterday with the special meeting and the CRA, so wasn't able to catch it. And then, but by the time I got home, I was watching Keeler Richardson on American Idol. So anyway, sorry about that.
What's the update on the old medical center on Palafox?
No substantive update other than I've asked our city attorney's office to continue to look into. I think the fees are somewhere over $250,000 now, and just as important isn't the dollar amount; it's the time. It's how long those have been taking place. Again, I'm tired of looking at it, and I don't live across the street, or I don't live in surrounding neighborhoods that are more tired of looking at it than me. And so we're going to pursue, at least pursue what our options are legally. So whether that's a lien, whether that's something more severe than that, I'm open to that. But I don't have that information yet at what options would be made available to the city. But we are pursuing it.
And continuing with Blight, property on 1200 North Palafox caught on fire in 2024. It was bought by an out-of-state property owner 3 months later. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't have any, just because I know that's a little different. It might have been used commercially, but it was a residential property. Obviously, that's a little bit different. But don't have any information on that. That's come across my desk. So,
Mayor, just a follow-up question again on the Bay Center and the meeting with the county. So there's obviously the whole lease structure that you mentioned in your email to the CRA, but is there, I guess, what else is the city going to bring to this discussion with the county as far as potential CRA funding or anything like that? What's the, beyond the study, that mentions the federal opportunities. What is, I guess, what's the city's offer?
Well, remember, I mean, again, when we say what's the city going to, remember, you got 7 council members and you got an administration. So I just want to qualify, I may have thoughts or things that I'd want to bring, but that's just the administration's, right? Well, I maintain what I've said earlier. I think if something needs to shake loose within the CRA at the Grand Hotel, for example, whether that be TIF or some type of abatement, I think that makes some sense. But you have to understand what's the entire mechanism of any of these facilities, all 4 of them: sports, ice, Bay Center, convention center. The distinct prime beneficiary of any of those facilities existing is the bed tax first and sales tax second. So that is the primary beneficiary financially. And one of the biggest misnomers that, and I'm sure we'll hear a lot about, all 13 of us will hear a lot about, is, well, wait a second, the ice rink doesn't make money or the convention center doesn't make money. If these things made $5 million a year, we wouldn't be building them. I mean, the private market would be building them, making $5 million a year. But it's because you're not looking at the revenue correctly. If these things, the goal is for these things to break even, or as close to break even as possible, because of the massive generation of bed tax and sales tax that's taking place because that facility exists. So you have to add in the other factor of that. So in one opinion, the investment in the facilities themselves, where the prime beneficiary is bed tax and sales tax. But if you're talking about properties that are in the CRA that are outside that, or if you're saying that these facilities would be paying property tax within the CRA, I don't suspect that would be the case, but certainly that would make sense. But I mean, I think you have to look at when you look at return on investment, you have to look at where's the revenue going. That's, to me, should be the front of the line in any project, not just Bay Center. The front of the line of expense should be the front of the line of revenue. And so, I think that's why we're talking about bed tax dollars primarily, because, I mean, as a community, we're talking about that because that's who would get the hotel nights and that's who would get, all of those things. But I'm always open to where the city plays a role. I've floated out the other example is from a parking structure standpoint. Hey, we have infrastructure to do paid parking and things like that, or to bond against future parking revenue. Maybe that's a way that the city can play a role. So we are in no way standoffish about, the city having some, playing some responsibility within that. I've heard it mentioned vaguely like, hey, everybody's got skin in the game. I fully expect everybody's going to have skin in the game, but I also expect that that's going to be, the ratio of that is going to be measured by the actual reason we're doing this, and so we would make that assessment and happy to entertain any ideas from the county staff, city staff, or city council on what way the city can play a role. But I would do the same thing on behalf of the city administration that I do when private development comes and meets with us. I say, hey, we just do the same math you do. And we're going to say, well, for this many city tax dollars, this is what the city gets. This is what's good for the community. We'll make that assessment as they come. So, but we are not closed off or standoffish about the idea of that the city may need to make an investment. It just might be in different places. It may not just be throwing it on top of bed tax money, for example. It might be other ways that we can participate.
Last question
Yeah.
for you. A Broward County judge ruled that Florida's red light law is unconstitutional because it shifts the burden of proof on the vehicle owner. So does that raise any concerns for challenges here in Pennsylvania?
I think every time one of those happens and then gets appealed and then things like that, that happens in many different facets, obviously, of government over the years, including preemption of proposed legislation in Tallahassee. So the point is we take those as they come. If that becomes an issue and they aren't able to be used in Florida, then we'll adjust accordingly. But I think it's just kind of a wait and see approach with when we hear things happening in the other side of the state that aren't final about anything. Then we just continue as normal. But it's our job to adjust and pivot if things change. So, all right. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.